because I remember being in Maynooth with Alan Brogan, and Alan would have been a cocky young fella, and he was like, listen, this is just mathematics. Dublin have won an All-Ireland in every decade. If this is 1999, I'm going to win an All-Ireland in the noughties before I finish. As it turns out, he didn't. It was the first decade that they didn't, but he had to wait until a few years later to end up winning 3. But isn't it mad how fellas from these traditional counties might even think?
The GA Hour is sponsored by Paddy Power. For exclusive content from their GA ambassadors and other high-profile contributors, check out news.paddypower.com.
So Stevie McDonnell, welcome back to the show. I heard you were asked on Twitter last night, did you get the bullet?
yeah, that's what a wee bit of absence does.
You can categorically deny Stevie did not get the bullet. He's back in the mix today on a very big weekend for Armagh, but we're going to talk about that in part 2. We'll focus on Armagh and Cavan. I want to start off here, lads, giving John Horan a bit of bloody credit, because sometimes we can be very critical of the GAA hierarchy, and I'm not going to talk about the tier 2 because that's an irrelevance to me. He's talking about fixing the fixtures. So he was talking this week, and he said, when I took over as president, I promised that in summer 2019 to put a group together to take a look at the overall schedule and fixture programming that we offer within the organisation. Key to that is to give clubs an opportunity that they would have a meaningful programme on the ground. And Eddie Sullivan, former Secretary General within the public service, I'm not sure about public service, it doesn't work too well, but anyways, he's being appointed as the chairman of this committee. He's a former chairman of his club in St Sylvester's, so he obviously has a GA background. Importantly here, the CPA and GPA will each have a representative on the committee, and other members from other sectors. Second level will have a representative, third level will, and from within the organisation itself, people who have an understanding of the fixture programme. There's no silver bullet for this, and it would be easily solved. If it was easily solved, it would be a long time ago. I think it's easily solved, but I do think it's probably complex, but I think once there's a will, which there is now, I don't think there had been a will. But this is fantastic. This is what we've been calling for a long time, for everyone to get in a room. Let's trash this out. And it's important to have CPA, GPA, second, third level, all those. Yep. But importantly too, to have people within the organisation itself who have experience trying to plan out these fixture schedules. Because without all of them working together, you won't come up with a solution. I'm delighted with this. I'm delighted with it. One thing that's confusing me is why John Horan is trying to push through his tier 1 at the end of this year before that committee gives their recommendations for an overall structure. I think John Horan wants his legacy to be that he got into tier 2, because it doesn't make sense for him to to push in a tier 2 this year and to not ahead of what recommendations, do you know what I mean, this committee, I'm sure they might come up with a tier 2 themselves, but how does it fit into their new season?
Yeah, and how does it affect Pádraig Duffy's whole proposal that he spent a lot of time working on?
Oh, that's gone. That's gone. This whole Super 8's proposal is going to be in its third year next year. Yeah. So we're looking at this committee bringing forward recommendations, I'm sure, for Congress next year for a new championship structure in 2021.
Yeah. Well, and it is. You're right. It's good to hear John Horan say that they are going to get in the room and they are going to look at this. And I do think it probably is more easily solved than he thinks. And maybe they will realise that when they're there. But it's going to take a bit more boldness. They actually say, right, we just need to get rid of something here, or we shouldn't have 7 weeks to run off the provincial championship, or 3 weeks between the Ulster final and the Super 8s. There's these gaps everywhere, which affects the clubs and affects all the other competitions. So they just need to be a bit more bold, and hopefully when they are in this room that somebody will raise these points. Yeah,
and they have a blank canvas, which is the most important thing, Stevie. Micheál Brody from the CPA said the whole idea that John Horan is committed to us is that there's no competition and no game that will not be looked at in this review. So there's no sacred cow. There's nothing that John Horan has said to them, well, the provincials have to say. Everything's on the table, which is fantastic as well.
Yeah, certainly. And listen, it might be more complex than what we make it out to be, but it's finally good to see representation from all different spectrums getting around the table and putting a committee together, and fair play to John Horan for doing so, and finally getting the opportunity to sit down over the course of the summer months to put it out there and see what type of solutions they do come up with, because it is an ongoing problem. We've spoke about it often enough here. It is a a pet hate of your own Woolies, and it'd be nice to see some kind of solutions put out there for people to view and have their opinion on anyway.
Yeah, this for me, this has been a campaign that I've been, the minute I started working in media, this is something that really pissed me off, that needed to be changed. And I think it was 2011, 2012, I first sat on a GPA committee to come up with championship proposals and whatever. I find it funny that there's still people coming up with their championship proposals. That day is gone now. So now it's in the power of these different groups, the CPA, the third level, the GPA, all of them to come up with them. We know CPA have 3 proposals. One of them is mine, which is not up for debate. It is my one. That's fact. Anyways, I would love for that
you
one to get in.
You should definitely be chairman of
that
CPA.
One is, no, because I saw Kieran Donaghy come out this week and he had a proposal that was very similar to mine, and Kevin McStay was talking in the Times this week about championship proposal, and it was like, that kind of ship has sailed. This is fantastic news this week. Like, you know what I mean? Let's stop coming up with them. It's not in our hands. It's not in anybody's hands anymore outside of the people, these stakeholders. That's the word I was looking for. But it is interesting. Micheál Brodie was asked about John Horan's Tier 2, and he says, it seems to be with the powers that be, that's what they want. John Horan has announced as one of the things he wants to get through in his presidency within his term. That's where it's going. But he did say that John Horan's Tier 2 has to fit in with what they want. Do you know what I mean? That there has to be some sort of consultation between the two. And if John Horan obviously, like I said, he wants his legacy to be he was the president that got into Tier 2, and I'm fine with that. Like, I mean, if he wants to push that, that's okay. But absolutely can't be pushed through if it's one, unless it fits in with what they're planning.
And it's just pushed through at whatever cost. Like, you know, your idea for a Tier 2 is like a league thing, but that means getting rid of the provincial championship.
Exactly.
You know,
exactly.
And if he pushed it through and kept the provincial championship, you know, like Kerry still aren't even in the bloody championship yet. You know, they haven't played, and if he keeps that,
we know all that. We know all that. There's loads of different ways of having a Tier 2. So that's the point.
So I mean, it'd be selfish of him to push it through and keep everything as it is, just to say I pushed it through.
It's important to know that that's not what's, you know what I mean. It has to fit in with what their remit is, which is fantastic. Another interesting one I was reading this week is that this is a pure anomaly, and this is GA rules that we talk about a lot on the show. And you know the way yellow cards don't carry over into extra time. It's a new game, and this is like, this happens in no other sport that I know of. It's just a pure GA rule that it's a brand new game. The extra time, you could be down to 12 men and then you're back to 15. But ticks do follow on into extra time, which is a really bizarre one. So this happened in the Kildare Longford match at the weekend. So Keane O'Neill was joking to reporters afterwards. He was saying that it was Ben McCormack had received a tick in normal time, and he was told that carried over into extra time, but yellow cards didn't. And I think Kildare were down to 40 men and they got back to 15, but Ben McCormack's tick carried through. You couldn't make this kind of stuff up.
You would think being issued a card is worth more than what a tick is worth, and then, you know, carrying a tick over, that's a bit ridiculous.
Bit of a weird one. I don't think we'll ever get too much controversy out of it, but it's just a little one of the intricacies of the GAA rules. Another comment I saw from Paul Geaney. So he was doing media recently, and he was on different websites. He was talking about this, and I had to laugh when I was reading it. He said probably at the start, he's talking about the start of his career. He says probably at the start, I suppose you're looking at it saying Kerry have won one All-Ireland every 2 years, and I'm 20 and I'm going to play for 10 years, so I'm going to win at least 5 All-Irelands. But it doesn't work like that, right? Because I remember being in Maynooth with Alan Brogan, and Alan would have been a cocky young fella, and he was like, listen, this is just mathematics. Dublin have won an All-Ireland in every decade. If this is 1999, I'm going to win an All-Ireland in the noughties before I finish. As it turns out, he didn't. It was the first decade that they didn't, but he had to wait until a few years later to win, to end up winning 3. But isn't it mad how fellas from these traditional counties might even think, I'm going to win an All-Ireland. This will happen. Look at the history of All-Irelands. I'm going to win them. I mean, it's actually disgrace.
We're ending up All-Ireland success again in 50 or 60 years.
Oh, well, you've only both won one.
That's what I'm saying. In 50 or 60 years,
every 130 years.
There's no sequence you've got.
Yeah. We have one every 100 years.
In the next 130 years, we
okay,
should
you've
win
got one every 130 years. Yeah. So maybe your great grandchildren are guaranteed. Martin Brittany finally got his chance to sow it into the Mayo footballers anyway. So we know he's been kind of very quiet about Mayo because he broke the story about the two managers. Now this is such old news that he really went to town on them, and then Mayo made him look very foolish by, almost beating the greatest team that arguably has ever played the game in 2 All-Ireland finals. So he was kind of shut up and had to lick his wounds and looked a bit silly, but obviously has his opportunity now after Mayo lost the other night in a game that they, you could argue that they dominated a lot of it. So he's back, he's playing the old Connolly and Holmes card
it's
again.
Unbelievable.
Old news, yeah.
So he says, almost 4 years on, you wonder if the players who drove the heave ever reflect on whether they were wrong. In their quieter moments, perhaps while revisiting the many failures by the narrowest of margins, do they ever conclude that the problem rests with them, not management? He said, as it happened, the wait was short as the two men who had given massive service to Mayo football over many years made another generous contribution by resigning rather than prolonging the controversy. It was player power in its ugliest form, as the squad knew that, however long it took, they would get their way. What is that got to do with, is that not ship not sailed at this stage? So then he goes on to blame them for Rochford leaving. He says the squad's silence as Stephen Rochford went through an uncomfortable time before eventually deciding to walk away last December didn't exactly strengthen his case. Silence can sometimes tell more than statements.
So the statement was bad originally, coming out against Holmes and Connolly.
So if you come out and you criticise the manager, you're a disgrace, you're upstairs. If you say nothing,
you're a disgrace. Yeah. Nothing changes.
It's absolutely brilliant. How can he get away with writing this? Jesus Christ.
Did Pat Holmes write it? It looks like one of the managers wrote it themselves.
Yeah, just let it go. Everybody's moved on from that. And anyways, we know that these players, lots of people talk about players taking control of dressing rooms, and that is the analysis from what I heard in the dressing room with Connolly and Holmes, that was those good performances under them were player led. Mm-hmm. So stop giving Holmes and Connolly so much credit for that, for their performances under them. Has
anybody in the last 3-4 years, apart from Martin, thought, Jesus, you know what they could have done with Pat Holmes and Noel Connolly in there? There was nothing.
No one.
Do you know what were they bringing extra that Stephen Rochford wasn't, or James Horan isn't?
Yeah,
such a strange
one.
Thing to be
after all the water that has gone under the bridge. After that, you think that's buried, and those players showed that decision was the right one with Rochford coming in.
They got the 2 All-Ireland finals, should have won both.
Yeah, should have won both.
Dublin.
Yeah, exactly. Right, so James Horan, who's been talking this week as well, he says, we're out of the Connacht Championship, but we're still in the competition. We'll work very hard for the next time we play. Cillian O'Connor, Seamus O'Shea, Fionn McDonough and Donny Vaughan, they're just 5 or 6 days away, so they are very close. So when you look at it with Mayo, you put Cillian O'Connor in that full forward line, you put Seamus O'Shea in midfield, put Aidan in the forwards, you put Fionn McDonough wing forward and Donny Vaughan wing back. You're making a huge change to your team. You're bringing, all of a sudden you've Aidan O'Shea and Cillian O'Connor in the forwards, who have both been out of it. Andy Moran's been out of it. So their best 3 forwards in those All-Ireland runs were all out of the forwards.
Yeah.
And then you've got Seamus O'Shea in midfield with young Ruan. And then you've got Donny Vaughan marauding from wing back. So they weren't at full strength, and their team will change. And this is the thing we're saying on Monday. All these new faces on the Mayo team, if they were good enough to have been there last year, you don't point in changing the team just for the sake of it. The team that almost beat the greatest team of all time is Mayo's best team. You can mess around with it all you want, but that's the reality.
Yeah, and listen, this time last week I was looking at rankings for each county, and Mayo were sitting at number 1. So
Martin Brettany's rankings, were they?
I don't know who
he loves a rank.
They were sitting at number 1, so that hasn't dramatically changed in the space of one performance. Yes, they should have possibly beat Roscommon, but you know, they were missing key players as well, and no team can afford to miss key players apart from Dublin. You know, let's be honest. They are the only team that can actually replace top quality players like Seamus O'Shea, Donny Vaughan, players like that there, and with that type of experience of playing championship football. Mayo, my concern for them though is, yes, I still believe they're going to be in the Super 8s, they're going to be in the mix, but they've got a long road to get to there from now till then, and you know, it's how to structure their own training preparations from now till then, and that's going to be very important for James Horan to get that really nailed on.
Yeah, no, I think so. We won't talk too much about Mayo because we talked about them on Monday, and we'll have plenty of time to talk about them again. They're not playing this weekend. But Westmeath GAA have appointed Patrick Doherty as the county's head of operations. It's another thing that I've been saying for a long time, is that each individual county board in the country should appoint a chief executive officer like Dublin, use the Dublin model, who has business expertise, who can run a business. Now, I'm not too sure about Patrick Doherty's background because I checked his LinkedIn, and it just says that he was the Games GAA administration and national match officials coordinator since 2008 for the last 11 years. So I don't know, like, it's a decent bit of experience. So his new role will be liaising with county management and overseeing the day-to-day running of the GAA in Westmeath on a full-time basis. So that makes so much sense. It's a business. Part-timers can't do it. Part-timers with no experience in this field cannot do it. Therefore, county boards are all struggling financially because the business is not being run efficiently. There isn't even a full-time member of staff. Like, there's a secretary whose main role would be fixtures and, you know, things like that. It's not actually running the business side of it, and it's just so obvious to me. The one county board that's run brilliantly is Dublin because they have a chief executive officer full-time. And they've been able to develop marketing roles within the organisation, and they have 16 different sponsors and partners. And now we know Dublin's the most glamorous, but who's to say that on a lower level, Laois or Westmeath couldn't have all these partners, and, you know, couldn't have all these different companies sponsoring them and giving them something. Like, that model should be copied.
Absolutely. And there is financial restraints on all county boards, so there is. So if there there's a wage then to pay if they're I suppose providing that type of employment to somebody, but it will pay for itself. Armagh are currently looking for an operations manager as well. I've seen them advertising this week.
Very good.
Brian Mallon, I think, was in a similar post to that.
He was in a coaching. He was head of coaching, was he not?
No, Brian Mallon was maybe overlooking operations. So I don't know what the situation is there, whether he's moved on or whatever. But I've seen that they have come out and advertised the vacancy this week. You know, as I said, if you have the right person in, promoting your county teams, getting the right type of endorsements coming in the door, then certainly it's going to pay for itself. You know, you have to take a more professional approach to how a county board is set up, and the county boards that will gain the most success and be rewarded will be the ones that have the foresight to go ahead and, I suppose, employ somebody with you know, a clear vision for the county. Clear vision,
exactly. A clear vision, a clear strategy, and being able to implement that and get everybody and delegate to all the part-timers then, this is what I want you doing, and someone who's overseeing the whole thing and is able to improve it. Because the Derry County Board Treasurer Michael Hassan has resigned. The county is reportedly suffering from financial difficulties. So the report says that he had other commitments, wasn't it? It wasn't necessarily because of these financial difficulties, but or other work commitments. But he was supposed to serve a 5-year stint. He stepped down, right? Is that it?
No, did he not come in?
He came in late. Sorry, he came in late for somebody else.
He's done 5 years, but he wasn't supposed to do this year, but they couldn't get it filled, so he stepped in.
So he stepped in, right?
And the report, it says, I think it was in the Irish News, it says there were several sources that said it was an impossible job because they were losing so much money. And in fairness to Derry, like, they're trying to do things right. Like, they're trying to spend money in the county teams and the underage teams, and they do it fairly across hurling and football. Like, you know, they do proper investment in both.
Yeah.
And
it's just the strain is very high. They're talking about spending 600,000 this year, which is up from 484 in 2018.
I think the spend per month at the minute is 60-70k. Like, that's
78,000.
Serious money going out each month. And if you don't have it coming in, then it's going to put pressure on anybody in a job like that there, important as that.
That's the thing. So the county's net cash flow decreased from 93,000 in 2018, leaving their cash reserves at just 3,659. So down 97,000 something from the previous year. So they're obviously got serious cash flow problems. I don't know how county boards can raise that kind of money. You know what I mean? It's not easy. Every year there's a new expert in the backroom team that needs to be paid.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's the reality of it. And then you've got the travelling expenses are a huge drain. But that's it. It's gone so professional now that it's put such a strain on county boards to just, like, I mean, I think they're all at breaking point.
Yeah, and sometimes it's so fickle to depend on a winning team that comes along and maybe helps the county generate a bit more money. Like, I always remember I used to work in Donegal and I was covering this event. It was a team in Inishowen, and they were doing a fundraising event for Donegal training expenses, and they didn't have any players on the panel. They were just doing a whole fundraising event for them. So clubs find it hard enough to make money, and they were fundraising to hand it all over to Jim McGuinness for training expenses for Donegal team. But that was because Donegal had sort of captured the imagination of the whole county, you know, so they were all happy to help. And Derry haven't had that in a while, and maybe that's what it takes sometimes, a team to sort of break through the wall. Yeah,
exactly. Two things that are really pissing me off at the moment. One is Jim Gavin being asked about Diarmuid Connolly's return. Leave him alone. Like, stop asking that after every single game. Like, I mean, someone will get the scoop on that if it happens, but like, Jim Gavin isn't going to break that in the
not after a championship
after
match.
the game. No. And even when he says the usual, the door's always open. Why is that being reported on? Like, I mean, that's no different to the 2 weeks before. It's just the door's open. Jim Gavin must be sick of it. I'm surprised he's still answering it. Like, seriously, give it a break. Diarmuid Connolly, if he's back, he's back. If he's not, he's not. Stop going on and on about it. And I don't want to read from Jim Gavin ever again that the door's open for Diarmuid Connolly. Like, Christ almighty, leave that go. Another thing that's pissing me off recently is Peter Keane being asked about Dublin. So Peter Keane's not going to answer that question. Like, I mean, they've lost the league final to Mayo. They're in a Munster championship. Dublin is a faraway dream. Do you really think asking Peter Keane about Dublin, he's going to say, Jesus, well, I think we've a good chance against Dublin now when we get there, and all the headlines that will be associated with that. So Peter Keane has developed a nice little tactic for answering these kind of stupid questions. He says, this was him asked about Dublin. So he says, I remember learning to drive, and I remember going out the main road. It was kind of different then when you were learning to drive. I was inside the car with my father, and we were driving out the road from Cahersiveen, and we were heading out to Valentia Island. We were at the Points Cross, which was only a short bit out. I started asking a question which was about the road about 2 miles out, and he chewed me and he said, we'll worry about that when we get there, and at the moment we'll worry about this.
Right.
And there you go. And I think there's another one as well, which is brilliant. Every manager Jim Gavin should just tell a stupid story when asked about Diarmuid Connolly, like Eric Cantona, the seagulls followed the
What about the guy who used to manage Blackpool? He was brilliant for the stories.
Ian Dowie.
Not Dowie. No, I can't remember his name. Superman for the stories afterwards.
He just held him, yeah. So this was another one. So I think he was asked about maybe his captain or something like this. I'm not sure the context of this, but this was just when he came into the job and he hadn't met the players or anything like that. So he says, I suppose I haven't even a panel picked. So where would I start with that one without a panel? It's like digging a field and you don't have a shovel. We'll get the shovel first and then we'll start thinking about that one.
That's brilliant.
We'll come back with a bit of analysis. So Stevie, Rory Grugan was talking during the week here, and he says our record has not been good against Cavan in Ulster Championship over the past few years. So in that respect, we will be up against it. However, we have to view this as a motivating factor. So I had a look back thinking, Jesus, had they been beaten by Cavan? They were beaten by Cavan in 2016. That was in Breffni Park. A terrible performance. I think it was Geezer's first year out on his own. And they beat Cavan in 2014. Yeah. They're the only two more kind of...
No, 2013 as well. Paul Grimley, there was a bad defeat over in Breffni Park as well.
Right, I didn't go back to 2013. So,
it
hasn't. It's not like it's been very one-sided.
No, it hasn't been. Probably it's 50-50 in the last decade or so. But more recent performances and that humiliation back in 2016 will always stick in the mind of Armagh people.
That was the one. That was the really poor. Tactically, they weren't at the races that day, Armagh, and they got their comeuppance.
That's when they put Paul Courtney in. That's who would have been
the goalie,
player,
yeah, which is very good. So this looks to be a 50-50 game. Really difficult one for me to even call. Jason McLaughlin was talking from Cavan. He says, we let ourselves down in the past against the Monaghans, the Tyrones, the Donegals. We're going into a match against Armagh and they'll hold no fear to us.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, they're fighting words for Armagh. For Armagh. Cavan have no fear of Armagh whatsoever, according to Jason McLaughlin.
Yeah, and they're just probably right as well. You know, they have in their eyes beat a better team going into the semi-final. Monaghan have been one of the most consistent teams in Ulster in particular in the last 7-8 years. And you know, it was a huge obstacle for Cavan to overcome as well. Near neighbours as well. They nearly beat them last year by all accounts, but this year, you know, they got off to a great start. I think there's something special about Mikey Graham as a manager as well. I think he sets his teams up well, he gets them well motivated, and he has them in, you know, in a good place mentally going into games like this as well. But Cavan certainly should have no reason to fear Armagh based on last performances as well. Cavan put in a good solid performance against a decent Monaghan team. Armagh weren't particularly impressive overcoming down.
There's a lot of pressure on Armagh. That monkey is off Armagh's back now. Can we see Armagh letting the shackles off now?
Well, the only thing is, listen, there has been a lot of pressure, more so on Kieran McGeeney's shoulders, because he hadn't achieved Ulster success in any match in his tenure as Armagh manager to date until the last year against Down. But this particular Armagh team, for some reason over the last number of years, don't perform well when they are favourites going into a game, and they are favourites going into the Down game. They always seem to produce their best performances when they are going in as underdog, and Cavan are going into this game as favourites. How are they going to cope with that type of tag? How are Armagh going to cope as underdogs? And I believe the less pressure on this Armagh team, we get the best out of them, and for that reason I do think it's going to be a 50-50 game. Yeah,
what do you think, Conan? I think, like, I mean, that's a big thing. Obviously it's just very close. It's not Cavan are favourites with Paddy Power, but like, I mean, the thing with Armagh is, like, their forwards are their strongest unit, right? So they almost have to work back from that. But then Cavan are going to play that kind of 13 men behind the ball, 2 men up. How Armagh can actually be able to hold their shape to get the most out of their forwards, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I was just thinking, does that suit Armagh in a way as well? It leaves them less exposed. Like, they don't need to worry about McManus or somebody destroying them at the other side. You know, they can still try and win the game with their forwards, even if it's going to be tight. And one of the things I sort of worry about Armagh, it's hard to trust them, like, over the last few years now.
Exactly.
Like, you look at their team and think, yeah, they're going to do it, but one of the things that is sort of making me lean towards them this year is the bench that they brought on against Down. I think they got 2-4 off the bench from it, and like, you had Shields and Morgan and Mernon.
Yeah, but the problem is, like, Mernon come on and made a huge impact in
he'll
the
start
game,
now, right?
No, he's not fully fit, so he's not going to start.
Down match was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago.
That match will crown him.
He only come on the last 10 minutes of injury time, you know, and he's not, if he had been anywhere near fit to play, he hadn't played in any National League games at all
but
this
2
year.
weeks after coming on and playing 10 minutes.
But it was a last call, last chance saloon for Armagh, for Kieran McGeeney to throw him in there.
Oh no, I know that.
So, you know, he made a massive difference in the game, and he was definitely the difference with Armagh winning and losing that match. But I don't think he's fully fit yet, and I don't think, yes, he'll be stripped out and he'll be named in the subs, but I don't think he's going to start. A fit Andrew Mernon all day long, you put him in there, absolutely.
Right.
A big plus for Armagh this weekend could be Niall Grimley could be back and fit and hopefully ready to start, and also Oisin O'Neill, brother Ryan O'Neill, is back. Now, he's played a couple of games for Crossmaglen. That'll bring up his match sharpness to date. You know, he has been out injured for most of the season as well.
So you see Stephen Campbell being held in reserve then as well?
I would be playing Stephen Campbell.
He made a big impact though. He seems to hit the ground running, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. Stephen Campbell for me is a player who responds well to a wee bit of pressure. So he's a player that can turn it on and produce big scores when it matters most. And, you know, I don't like to see a player of his ability with his finishing powers to be sitting on the bench. I know it's great to have a player, you know, sprung from the bench that has the ability to turn a game, but I'd rather see Stephen Campbell start, because I think the confidence that can do for him, he's the type of player that can maybe kick on and score 5-6 points then.
So where does he fit in there, right? So, like, I mean, you'd imagine Armagh at all times will try and leave 4 forwards up there because they've so much talent, and they'd be stupid not to do that, and they'll be trying to defend with everybody else then. So, like, I mean, Rory Grugan will probably play in front and 3 inside. Would the 3 inside be Rian O'Neill, Jamie Clark and Stephen Campbell? Is that who you're looking at? Or, like, I mean, how do you see the shape? You need that link man, and Grugan's probably the best
Rory didn't have
distributor.
his best day.
No, he
the
was
last
poor.
day against Down.
That wasn't a game that would suit him, you know.
No, I appreciate that there, but Rory knows, and particularly as the captain of the team, that he has to step up. And in games like this here, like the Ulster Championship semi-final, you know, particularly when you're the underdog, you need your leaders to step up and put in big performances. So Rory's going to have that pressure on his shoulders to go in and do that this weekend. I would have Stephen in the half-forward line as well. I think he's great at coming on to the play. He's a big unit. He's a presence for kick-outs as well.
But he's not a working half-forward though. You're going to have to
but
have two workers
he's
there.
a creative half-forward, and he's got the ability to thread ball into the likes of Ryan O'Neill or
yeah, but Stevie, the Cavan half back line will be attacking. You don't want him chasing them. Like, I mean, he's not going to do that role. You're going to have two workers in that half forward line.
Well, Aidan Nugent, that's what I would do. I'm only saying what I would do. Aidan Nugent's going to be at wing half forward. Aidan Nugent put in a good shift on his debut last day out.
Yeah,
He scored
so
a point.
he'll do that. Jamar Hall then as well.
Jamar Hall is also going to be a winner.
So I agree that they'll be there. So
Yeah.
then Stephen Campbell doesn't fit in based on the last day.
Well, for me personally, I would be playing Stephen Campbell, so I would. You know, and there's other players. Ryan O'Neill is definitely going to start. You know, he kicked 8 points in his debut as well.
He'll start and Jamie will start. That's guaranteed, right? So there's no doubt about that. Grugan will start. He's captain because he'll maybe link between those two.
This is where I would put Stephen Campbell in. I would put him in based. If you have to pick players based on performances, then Rory Grugan doesn't make the team for me. And that's being honest, and I like Rory as a player. I think he's a great talent, and he's another player that can pinpoint a pass. But he hasn't had his best season for Armagh.
What do you think McGeeney will do rather than what you would do? Because let's talk about what might potentially happen this
Rory
weekend.
Grugan's playing. Grugan's
Grant.
starting.
So Rory Grugan, this is where I'm trying to get at. So Rory Grugan will be playing out in front of Ryan O'Neill and Jamie Clark.
Yeah.
Am I right? So Stephen Campbell will probably lose out.
But Stephen, Ethan Rafferty is another player who's only coming back from injury. Started the last year as well.
Centre forward the last day.
Was brought back on. Is he going to be a starter this weekend? He's a huge presence as well, and an influential player on his day. But Stephen Campbell for me is fitter, and he's more, I suppose, inclined to be much sharper than what Ethan Rafferty is at the minute. And you have to have players that are at a level above in terms of match sharpness than the players coming back from injury. And Stephen Campbell fits that there category down to a T at the minute. Now we'll be putting him in before maybe Ethan Rafferty or Rory Grugan, but there's two options there. But Rory Grugan will be starting, I know.
Yeah, there's options, and like also if Murnan did start, Ryan O'Neill would go number 11, and that would probably be the change there. Like
in an ideal world, I'd love to see Ryan O'Neill at 11. I think he's the one player that definitely can kick long range scores, can pull the strings for Armagh.
Oh, he can get it down with the outside of the boot kick passes down very fast.
Absolutely, and we've seen how effective his kick pass in was to Murnan
I think they'll start with that. I think that was just too tasty for McGeeney to go, this is a very serious match, and why are you holding Murnan in reserve for? What are you holding him in reserve for?
They would start with it if Murnan was fit, and I would go with that all day long. Listen, in an ideal world, my forward line for Armagh would be Oisín O'Neill, Ryan O'Neill, Stephen Campbell, Jamie Clark, Murnan, and I would have.
I would love to be a halfback against your team.
Aidan Nugent in there, you know, because I think Aidan Nugent, he's an absolute clinical out and out poacher, so he is, and the closer to goal, the better he will be. But you know, if he's playing off a player with the ability, the aerial threat of Andrew Murnan, I think there would be goals galore in that forward line.
So I think Murnan will start. Let's stick to what we think might happen. You think he won't start? I think Murnan will potentially start in beside Jamie Clark. Rory Grugan, Ryan O'Neill left up. I think everybody else will be told they have to work all over the field, and I think they'll left up. I could be wrong on this, but I think if Murnan has had 2 weeks after coming on, that kind of thing crowns a player. He'll play in-house matches the following Tuesday, or they'll probably have recovery Tuesday. They won't do too much. He'll do that session. They'll play a match Thursday night. They'll probably play an A versus B, big one on the Sunday, and then he's back this week as well. Like, for a role of full forward, he doesn't need to have to be flying it. Do you know what I mean? So I think he'll start.
No, my belief will be the forward line will be Jamar Hall, Rory Grugan at 11, and Aidan Nugent at 12. Inside then, Stephen Campbell could replace Ethan Rafferty.
Right. Okay. Right. Well, that's it. So, what do you think they're going to do with Garrod McKiernan? Is Charlie Vernon seems to be perfect for him? No, he's got because obviously McKiernan plays midfield, but also goes into the full forward line.
Yeah, exactly. And there was talk, I suppose, leaving the pitch in Uri last day out, the high ball in put Armagh under severe pressure, and Charlie has played a full back in the past, so Charlie could be the man pinpointed to mark Greg McKiernan. Greg McKiernan's still a bigger man than Charlie Vernon. He has a couple of inches on him.
Yeah, but he plays more on the ground, McKiernan, doesn't he, Conan? He's not necessarily a Kieran Donaghy type full forward when he goes in.
But he would still be a huge presence in there and cause severe problems if the right type of delivery was put into him.
Yeah.
James Morgan, the man, maybe, like if you want to keep Charlie Vernon free.
He's going to have to mark Riley or McPhee. Yeah. No, but James Morgan definitely starts the next day. He played very well when he came on.
He done extremely well when he came on, and I was surprised somewhat that he didn't actually start the last day out, but he done extremely well coming on.
So who do you think he'll pick up, Martin Riley or McPhee?
I think they might leave Kennedy actually for Riley. I thought he had a good debut the last day out, really put his opponent on the back foot, kicked a couple of good points. And
Taylor made for Shields to come in and look after Riley.
Shields could do it as well. Shields played really well coming off the bench. And going back to your point that you made earlier on, people be concerned about the quality of subs coming off the Armagh bench. I think Armagh's bench at the minute is really strong, and they've got players that can come in and make an impact. Shields, particularly last day, got a goal. He drives forward. He's got a brilliant engine on him, and gets back in defence as well. As does James Morgan is an out defender, but got up the field and kicked a brilliant point the last day out as well. So who is going to be earmarked to mark these boys? Shields, if he does start, could be the man to mark Martin Riley. If not, I wouldn't have any fear in Kennedy going on him either.
I think James Morgan will pick up McPhee. The reason that is because McPhee spends most of his time in the full forward line, and he comes out a bit, and Morgan would obviously suit him better in there. It's a difficult one for Armagh to deal with, really, because we know that McPhee, Garrod McKiernan and Galligan all interchange. Yeah. So with a team interchanging, especially when they're their main men, and you usually put man markers on their main men, are you dragging your defence all over the place? Do you know what I mean?
Really. Aaron McKay plays further out the field for his club, and only in his time with Armagh and with St Mary's that have I ever seen him move the full back. He would normally be a half back, midfield, half forward type of player. So if he starts a full back, which he will start a full back, and Galligan moves out the field, and Aaron McKay is more than likely to be able to follow him out there, and Charlie Vernon will just adapt and go back in maybe.
Right, okay. So it will be interesting to see what to do. Then again, Armagh can't exactly be changing their whole defensive shape just to be following these lads, but it did cause a lot of problems for Monaghan, the way they moved out and moved back in, and I don't think Monaghan knew whether they were coming or going.
Yeah, should not be a bit more sophisticated in a sense that you have your defence, and I know it's hard, but once these boys are coming into an attacking zone, then you're tagging them. Then
I don't like that.
McKiernan's maybe because you don't want McKiernan running at you,
but then the whole thing, you're running into a zone and then you double back and look for the ball.
Yeah, I think what's always worked best.
That's very messy.
What's always worked best for us in Armagh is a player has been tagged with the responsibility of marking a man. Wherever he goes in the pitch, you go with him. That's it. Yeah, that has always been the best policy for me personally within Armagh. I go back to our days when Kieran McGeeney, I remember a National League semi-final against Mayo, he was asked to mark Kieran McDonnell, and no matter where Kieran McDonnell went in the field, Kieran McGeeney had to follow him. That meant Kieran McGeeney was dragged out of the centre, so be it. Kieran McGeeney got man of the match in that game. That works best for Armagh when players are told your responsibility is this player, wherever he goes, you mark him. That leaves less of, I suppose, passing the buck option for the other players as well. But I was meant to be marking him and I was covering this zone. No, you're told to mark that man, you go with him wherever he goes. Simple as that.
Yeah, but again, that's fine. But then even if you're not passing the buck, you can just get taken on by one man and then the whole thing's opened up. If Gary McKiernan just takes on whoever's marking him, then he's free because somebody else.
If it comes down to a man v man and 1v1 situation, then I would have a lot of confidence in the Armagh 1v1 situations as well.
I think the way the game has gone now and the way teams are attacking with everyone and defending with everyone, even if it is a 1v1 game, it's a 1v1 game with 12 versus 12 in one half of the field. So in that regard, I remember back when I would have been playing wing back and it was 6 versus 6 in your half pretty much. So if I'm playing left half back and my man is on the outside of me, I might drop in and double up. If I think the other fella has him held up, that it's not a risk that when I run in he's going to kick it out. If he's held up, you'll run in. Now it's so easy to double up because there's so many bodies around. You can leave your man and double up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because whether you like it or not, unless you're getting Rian O'Neill on a transition, kind of on a turnover, and he's launching a beautiful missile off the outside of his boot, if you're working it through the hands, by the time you get to the other 45, you're heading towards a 12v12 situation. Isn't that the reality of pretty much every game you're watching now?
But this is why you probably don't need more than 11 back.
You don't need a full-time sweeper anymore.
No.
I don't think. Now maybe against Armagh at the weekend, Cavan will use one because of the Rian O'Neill threat at 11 direct ball, and we know Armagh like that ball, so it would pay for Cavan to play a full-time sweeper probably against, and they are that way inclined as well. So
mine will definitely sweep anyway, I'd say.
But you think he'll be the one doing that? Yeah.
Like if you're 12v12 inside the 45 or 11v11, it means there are players in the opposition team at the other side of the pitch, like on the wing. It's going to take 3, 4, 5 seconds to get the ball over to them, and then you can shift over anyway. So you don't need to be man marking religiously when the ball's completely like 100 meters away from you.
Yeah,
you can shift over it as a zone together. Like.
Yeah, no, and I think they do that. But the obvious thing for Armagh this weekend, from an attacking point of view, is they're going to have the 2 lads inside, potentially 3, and a sweeper will cover them, and then they'll have a man outside the sweeper. So it's what this man outside the sweeper is able to do. We saw last week with Cottle Craig, he was the man on the outside of the 2 lads. Now Mayo played no sweeper at all, but even if you play a sweeper, you don't sweep in front of the front man. You sweep in front of the 2-man full forward line usually. So whoever that link man is outside that, I imagine it'll be Grugan, maybe Rian O'Neill, whoever can give good ball into the 2 lads. When you can get the ball to them quickly, then they can give tasty diagonal balls, and the sweepers kind of, you know what I mean, at 6s and 7s. But it all depends on whether Armagh can keep that shape, because if the fella who's playing out in front of his man takes off down the field, sure, he's pulled out. Yeah, you know, and it's so easy to pull a team out of the shape that they want now, the way the game has gone. Yeah.
So who do you have?
I'm not too sure. It's a very difficult one to call. Like, I mean, Cavan played so well, and I don't think Armagh are a good matchup for Cavan. Like, I mean, Cavan's system where they'll leave 2 forwards up and they'll just the game will be very disorganised. They're up for the game. They're bloody in your face. They're I don't know. Like, I mean, it's a really hard. I've backed Armagh. I think Paddy Power have it at. Let me just check what the odds are. I was going to leave this for Paddy Power predictions.
I'll tell you the odd. Armagh 6-4.
Armagh 6-4. Cavan are 8-11. I've kind of vouched for Armagh early in this year, and I'm not going to jump off it now. I think they have the forward line. The whole question here is whether their forwards are going to be dragged too far out of shape. That when they're dragged so far out, there's too much of a disconnect between. Then it turns into a hand passing game. I think Cavan win the hand passing game.
Absolutely.
If Armagh can get their kick passing game going, I think their forwards could do damage. So I'm going to go with Armagh, but that's the way I see the game.
I agree totally with that though. When Armagh start fist passing the ball around, it doesn't suit the style and the players that they have. But when they kick long delivery and support that play, then they look very, very effective. So what type of style will they adapt? What type of football
are they allowed to adapt?
Will they be allowed to play?
Yeah.
And, you know, given the fact that they are going in as underdogs, Cavan are going in as favourites, I think it's very much a 50-50. I wouldn't rule out a draw in this game. I really wouldn't.
Okay, Conan, are you going for a draw, or you wouldn't rule it out?
No, I think I will go for a draw on this one. I think both teams, you know, man for man, are evenly matched. Yes, Armagh slightly probably better forwards, but I think Cavan's rear guard is decent as well, and they can definitely do a good job on them. But I will go for a draw on this one.
Yeah, Martin Riley was so influential the last time. Conan McVitie's such a good player. Like Cavan have those 3 forwards, Riley, McVitie, and they have Gerard McKiernan, and they're top notch. Now, luckily for them, Madden chipped in the last day, and he had a really good game, and Murray on the wing scored 2 as well. So they got a little input from everybody.
Yeah.
Now, I do think Armagh's forward line is much stronger. I think at midfield they'll break even. And it's whether, it's like I said, I suppose, to Stevie, it's whether Armagh can get a kicking game going, whether Cavan allow them. Cavan are a better hand-passing team.
Yeah, I'm sort of on the fence a little bit. I think I'm going to lean towards Cavan, to be honest. And I just think they might have a plan. Like, I can see Faulkner just coming and ruining Rian O'Neill's day, you know, and just annoying the shit out of him.
They're very good defenders, Cavan. Sticky, and their system is sticky, but they've big physical defenders too.
Yeah, strong and just pestering players, like, you know, so I can just see them just having a plan that's going to just upset things that Armagh want to do. I think Armagh, if they have Murnan in reserve and even Campbell, I know you want to see him starting, Stevie, but I loved him coming off the bench because he won his own ball, a difficult ball, and he put it over himself, and I think he'd be important for him coming off the bench. But I think Cavan might age it.
Okay. If Armagh don't play in the Cavan's hands in terms of the slow laboured approach, then they've definitely got a good chance. But if they put long ball in, it puts the Cavan rear guard under more pressure.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so we've got a Cavan, we've got an Armagh, and we've got a draw. So we're all, one of us is going to be right, lads. Right, we'll come back with Paddy Power predictions. So we'll start off with Clare versus Kerry. So they did a very nice thing and they put this on the exact time as the Champions League final, Stevie. So there's no chance you're going to Cusack Park. And if it was on the television, there'd be no chance you'd be watching it.
Absolute no chance, guaranteed. I might flick it over at half time to get an update, but that's about it.
It's a disgrace on a JOE podcast. Listen, you could be getting your P45 now, like your man asked you last night.
You talk about Everton often enough here.
I do, and I use a lot of soccer and analogies. Right, so Paddy Power of Clare at 16-1, Kerry are 1-13. The handicap here is 13 points. Good news for Clare is David Tuberty is back, and he made a huge difference. He makes a huge difference to Clare, to their forward line. They were very, very unimpressive against Waterford. Like, they've played Kerry in 5 of the last 6 years, and they've always lost. But interestingly, the average winning margin has been 11 points. But the 2 games in Ennis in 2014-2017 were far closer than the ones in Killarney. And the ones Kerry scored 4 and 6 point victories in Cusack Park and 12 and 22 point thumpings in Killarney. So, like, I mean, the handicap's at 13. I'm vouching for Clare, going for Clare to beat the plus the 13, only because Cusack Park is a little bit of a fortress for Clare. It's a hard place to go. They might be able to get more hits in on Kerry. I think that Kerry, definitely, Peter Keane has been talking about them not being physically, like, this is the thing, they're able to hammer Clare last year. Now the talk is that Kerry aren't physically able and Mayo bullied them, and Clare are a big physical team, and now all of a sudden is Peter Keane almost telling teams to physically dominate us.
Yeah, well, Clare do have a big presence around midfield with Gary Brennan as well, and probably on his day one of the best midfielders in the country. So, you know, he's probably looking at players to get there and saying, how can we cope with these type of players? But you know, for me, yes, I do agree with you. I do think Clare will beat the handicap. Clare also, from my knowledge, have a wee bit of insight into Kerry and their backroom team as well. Declan O'Keefe is involved in their backroom team, so you know, he will provide some, I suppose, feedback to Colm Collins as well, to help Clare get a wee bit a step closer to Kerry. But ultimately, you know, it's going to come down to the class wins out in the end, and
the class,
Kerry's class will certainly see the game out, but I do think they'll beat the handicap.
It'll be interesting to see whether Peter Keane sticks to his young players, because we know that so many players made their debuts last year, and now, based on the league, that their goalkeeper Shane Ryan, Graham O'Sullivan in defence, midfielder Diarmuid O'Connor, half forwards Darren Moynihan and Gavin O'Brien, there's 5 more that are due to make their championship debuts. So is 5 new championship debuts on top of all the championship debuts that were given out last year? Like, is that a bit too much?
They're all good players, though, aren't they?
They're all good players, but I don't know. I still think your first choice midfield would be David Moran and
Jack Barry.
Yeah.
I think he likes O'Connor just because he obviously gives him that energy and that athleticism. Was his quote, was he comparing Diarmuid O'Connor with
Aidan O'Shea?
I thought that was very convenient. Like, I was thinking, well, why don't you compare Fergal Boland with Tommy Walsh? Or
exactly.
You know?
And I don't think that's fair even to get into their heads. Diarmuid O'Connor, you're not a match for him. Diarmuid O'Connor has to believe he's a match for Aidan O'Shea. Like, I mean, whether he is or not, Jack Barry anyway should pair off against Aidan O'Shea because he's a physical match. So I thought that was a weird comparison. It was almost a little bit defeatist. We're too young. Stop! I don't think that's the message.
They've won multiple All Irelands at minor level. They're not too young. These boys are serial winners.
I'm talking about the message, though. It's
not.
I
know that, but Peter Keane was over those minor teams as well. So I think you know, these boys know how Peter Keane work, and they'll not buy too much into that, to be honest.
Yeah, maybe not. It'll be interesting to see. Obviously, the big problem, and this is very similar analysis to a lot of matches, lads, because in the league final, the Kerry were playing 3 men up front, right, and a 3-man full forward line, and they were all playing an orthodox 3-man full forward line with their whole half forward line pulled out of space. So they were completely a huge disconnect that when they looked up it was too far to be kicking, so then they're working it through the hands, and then Mayo are back.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, the obvious analysis, and Roscommon did it, is they played a link man on the 45.
Yeah.
And that linked between the two. Why are teams not...
Every team needs a link man.
So
you cannot
why
forget
are they not doing
about
it,
the half
Stevie?
forward line.
It makes no sense, right? So no, the half forward line is difficult because they're all tracking men, right? And they have to give an honest effort to get after them, or else, because half-backs are too dangerous to let go.
Well, from time to time,
no,
a
let
half
me
forward can
finish.
cheat.
So the point, but I don't think half forwards can cheat. I think full forward lines can cheat.
Yeah.
I think half forward lines too dangerous. Half-backs are too dangerous. But in the league final, it was interesting. Tommy Griffin went running in, talked to David Clifford, and they used him as the link on the 45. Now, he's not the link man, but at least they identified that, Jesus Christ, we're having to work everything, and it's going to be Armagh's problem at the weekend as well. Can you get that link man on the 45 and allow him to stay there? Because feckin' defenders are dragging him out of that position. Now your game plan is screwed. Your good kicking game is gone. Kerry are like Armagh. Their number one game is a kicking game. They're not good at these disorganised hand-passing games. And there you go. Like, if I was the Clare manager, even they like to play more of an orthodox format, I'd be telling my half-back line, get out, attack at all costs, get them out of position, and maybe you might leave one sweeper back in front of the 3-man full forward line. And now Kerry have to work everything through the hands. Do you know?
Yeah, I don't like 3 up top anyway. Even if you were playing 6 forwards, out and out forwards, I don't think 3 full forwards help each other. You're just dragging another defender and you're taking up each other's space. And
But there's different ways of playing 3 up top.
Yeah.
You can play triangles, you can play 3 in
but like
full
you
forward
have
line, or
one
you can
of them
play 3 in a
drift
line or whatever.
I know
I
that.
understand that there, but
He's talking about a line.
I'd be of the same opinion. I like 2 men playing close to each other where there is still space, a lot of space in there, and maybe one sitting out and dropping out a wee bit. And players have to take that responsibility on themselves. They don't need a Tommy Griffin running in off the pitch to see that there's no outlet there in the half forward line. Players should see, right, how are we going to get the ball into the full forward line? I should be out there.
yeah, but when you're Clifford, Tommy Walsh, or McCarthy, like,
Yeah, but take it in turns.
also
Take it in
you have to
turns.
play him.
I think McCarthy had been taken off at that stage. He was doing it.
Right.
And then I think Paul Geaney came on maybe, and then they were wondering who's even able to do this job. Do you know,
Well,
I think
if Gooch was playing on that full forward line, you think he'd let that happen? He would have drifted out himself.
No, he
to
would have
get
told
on the ball.
somebody else to go out.
No,
and
he would have drifted out himself.
Yeah.
There's no doubt.
But someone
Good players, identify these type of problems and come up with a solution and go and do it.
I do think so, that somebody probably should have drifted out, and that's fair enough. If they're young players, maybe they weren't sure or comfortable in their boots to be able to do. But I do feel that I know what you're saying about the 3-man full forward line, but I remember seeing Kerry play Kildare, and they hammered them one day in Croke Park, and Kildare were playing a sweeper, and Kerry played 3 men in behind the sweeper. Sure, the sweeper didn't know where to cover.
Yeah.
He was just, because with a 2-man full forward line, there's loads of space either side, so the sweeper will cover the side that the ball's coming down. But with the 3-man, it's not as easy to do that, because they're interchanging behind you, and there's 3 different men to cover. So if you go try to cover one side completely, you're not sweeping over 2 men. Do you know that kind of way? So I think there is an advantage to playing 3 men in there, but again, can they be left in there? And most importantly, can your man outside them? Now you have to have 4 forwards. Not many teams want to leave 4 forwards. Most teams are like to defend with 12 players and leave 3 up. A lot of them are doing 2 up. Now, for me, that's brain dead, because there's too much of a disconnect. That Roscommon showed analysis we've been doing here loads of times. You need that link. Now maybe teams will be leaving a link. I'd leave 2 outside myself. I'd go 2 and 2.
Needs
That
to be
would
2 and 2,
yeah.
Or like, was it Mayo were doing 1 and 2 when they beat Kerry in that semi-final?
That was Doherty out in front of O'Connor and Moran. It's not like it's never been done before.
no.
This is
But the 1 and
groundbreaking.
2 for me, the 1, has a serious amount of work to be going through.
He does.
That's why 2 and 2 definitely works a lot better.
2 and 2 works together. Now, again, would Cavan allow the 2 outside, or will they allow it? Will they just say take off, get these lads out of there? Like, I think these cornerbacks, that's their tactics, lads. Do you see them? They're taking off for no reason. So that's the full back line. I think can cheat. I think if you're on the 45, Stevie, you can't let your man go. It's too dangerous. For me, if I was on the 45 and I cheated and it didn't work out, if you're on the full forward line, I think you've more of an argument to say, look, you know what I mean, there's enough back there. But on the half back line,
I understand that there, but if you've got a kicking team like Armagh or like Kerry or whatever it may be, and if they turn the ball over, look up the field, spotted Jamie Clark cheating on the half-forward line, put the ball in direct, then it makes your opponent think twice about going forward and breaking forward like that.
Paul Flynn made a good point on that, and I take your point, is that he said those turnovers don't happen anymore, that they're all teams are too smart on the ball now, that the idea that you just let your man go and then all of a sudden it's turned down and you're waving your hands free like the old days. He said teams just don't kick it away, so you don't get that. Now the only benefit to cheating like that is that your man will take off, he might not get on the ball, and he runs back to you and he's tired. So now you run the shit out of him. You know, that's the benefit of it. It's not really the benefit that the turnover is going to make this lad look like an idiot, because they're just too clever in possession, all the teams now. You know, you'll end up standing there for a long time if there's a stalemate at the other end. You know, so I find all that interesting. It definitely is interesting. Cork Limerick, lads. Who are we going for here? Are we all going for Clare plus 13 at home?
I think so, yeah.
Me and Stevie are anyway. Conan, what about you?
No, I'm going to go with Kerry
to hammer them.
Yeah.
Alright, okay. Kerry are 1-80. So Cork and Limerick, lads. Cork are 1-12, Limerick are 15-2. Cork have made 3 debutants. Have made 3 debuts. Handed 3 debuts. Handed 3 debuts too. Have 3 debutants. Right, so Nathan Walsh, Liam O'Donovan and Owen McSweeney. So they've actually picked their team. So full forward line looks dangerous. Paul Kerrigan, Brian Hurley and Mark Collins is probably the standout line on the team. Luke Connolly's not starting. I'm not sure if he's injured or what's the story. We know about Cork, lads. Their confidence is on the floor. Limerick are coming off a great win against Tipperary. We won't spend too much time on this one. Who do we fancy here?
Well, if Tipperary were playing Cork, you'd fancy Tipperary. You know, so if Limerick can replicate the performance against Tipperary, which will be quite difficult for them to do, but if they can, then they've got a chance. But even though Cork are the most frustrating county out there, they're the most frustrating team. I still think that even though their confidence is on the ground as well, they'll come out with a comfortable victory here.
Conan?
Limerick will never ever have a better chance of making the Munster final.
They've made a few.
Beaten division,
and they've beaten Cork too.
This Limerick team, no. Okay. Beaten, probably shouldn't have said never ever, ever. Division 3 Cork now, but yeah, obviously like Ian Corbett, he sort of came to their attentions and their hearts there. The last game.
Love him.
Class player, but I think Cork still will have too much for him.
Yeah, me too. I think Cork will win this one as well. I'm not going to be going near handicaps or anything like that though, because like we said, Cork aren't all that trustworthy. The last one this weekend, lads, is Longford and Kildare. This is in O'Connor Park, an absolute classic the last time. Longford are still 9-4 despite their brilliant performance, and Kildare 1-2. I don't know if Kildare kind of slight similarities with Armagh in that you kind of like them as a team, but they bloody annoy you because they're inconsistent and you can't trust them. And definitely this year, I'm not sure everything is rosy in that garden. To go 8 points up on Longford and then be pegged back and be up, they were 4-0 up at the start and kind of come back. They flatter to deceive Kildare, unbelievable. And they play a nice brand of football, but they definitely concede a lot of scores. And Longford, James McGivney and these fellas, even though it's nowhere near their best team, they were able to clean up. Still fancy Kildare. The defender or the favourites in the replay usually win. Interestingly, David Hyland, fullback, scored 4 points the last day, right? And one of them was a mark. Now, I didn't see this game, so usually we're used to a mark in the league being an offensive mark. So this fella caught a ball, obviously, from a kick out in between the two 45s, and because the wind was so strong in O'Connor Park, I was there. He obviously just caught it, got his mark, and kicked the point. I've never heard of that happening before. It's brilliant, isn't it?
Putting your best kickers out now to try and win kickers.
But isn't that really, lads, the modern game, and I'm against this. Fullback scored 4 points. It's wrong. It's not right. No, I'm serious. I don't like that. And I strongly favour fullback lines and full forward lines being told they cannot come outside, because again, these attacking cornerbacks are messing up the shape of good footballing teams, and I don't like that.
Fullbacks have to have an element of enjoyment in playing the game as well, you know.
Well, so if you're restricting
them to play in a certain
enjoyment, defenders' enjoyment come from defending. That's a different mentality to you.
Yeah, but not the modern day defender. You know, you've got to.
Well, I don't like the way defending's going then, Stevie, because if fullback lines are getting trills out of scoring points, but you listen to this analysis. Now we're talking about Kerry, Armagh, good footballing teams that want to play a kick and style, are potentially not being allowed to do it because their full forward lines are being dragged out by attacking full back lines. That's not right for the game as a spectacle. Do you agree or
yeah,
disagree?
but I think we talked like that's the manager's fault. Then just keep the full forward line in there, like, and let us have something to kick.
Yeah.
But David Hyland, I know your point.
Now I'd say David Hyland followed his man out as
Yeah.
well.
So why is the Kildare full forward not cheating there?
Longford,
Longford full forward. Yeah.
But 4 points is a lot. Like, 1 point, I can see your point. A bit
4 points is sensational.
Yeah.
I've never scored that from wing back.
So that's not cheating and nicking a little point and running back celebrating. That's somebody dominating the game and winning a mark. And
yeah, you'd be saying to whoever who's falling out, get back in there. This man's just scored a mark and stuck it over the bar. What do we think here? So Stevie, we'll start with you there.
No, listen, the favourite always wins second day out, and even
doesn't always now.
Yeah, but 90% of the time, and even without the 4 point return of their possible full back, again, I still think Kildare will have too much to say.
Favourite always wins second day out. Kildare,
yeah. Okay, I'll go with Kildare as well. I think they will win. They're a better team, and I think that we talked the last day. Longford were completely decimated. 8 starters not playing. They got a great kick with a really long, really strong wind, and Kildare that bit flaky. But Jesus, surely Kildare will. If Kildare can't beat Longford the next day, then you'd pray for them against Dublin and Croke Park. Right, listen, that's it, lads. Best of luck this weekend, Stevie. Let's hope you can do it, just because my tip will be right then.
It's Armagh or Liverpool?
Armagh, Liverpool. Jesus, Armagh.
I thought you were talking about Liverpool.
Oh, if they win that Champions League, I'll vomit. Now I know they're going to. I'm mentally preparing myself
I'm glad
for this.
to hear you say that.
Well, I am. I've got a Masters game this Saturday at 1:00 in Newbridge in the county grounds. Really excited about that. And we're going on the beer after that now, so I'll be jarred by 7. So I don't care. I'll be numbed. I'll be numbed to the pain of this. But
win or lose, we're on the booze.
I think that this Liverpool tradition in a final, I don't give Spurs any chance really. Like, I mean, it does count for a lot. I don't. Will we analyse the Champions League?
Andy Robertson's going forward all the time.
Robertson, yeah. Well, I think
disgraceful tactics from their full backs.
I think Ericsson should cheat. We're leaving it there. Right, we'll be back on Monday with a review show. Talk to you then. Good luck.